What's going on, everyone? This is L. Thomas with Power and Success Ministries. I'm so happy that you're here with us today. Today, I have my good friend, Dwayne Deloach, and we're going to discuss something that a lot of people struggle with in their lives, and it is the importance and power of forgiveness. Yo, D, how you doing today, boss?
I'm on cloud nine, man. I'm happy to be talking with you this morning. Hopefully, I got my mind and my soul right. Forgiveness is one of those things that's contrary to to your human experience. So I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, I say the right thing. um, as you know, I'm in the process of forgiving some folks, professionally and personally. So, we're gonna talk from a different place today. It's gonna be all right, though.
Yo, look, I was talking to someone yesterday, and she said to me, she said, Ellard, why is forgiveness so difficult? And I started thinking about her question, and I was thinking about the things I've undergone, right? Things I've actually maybe done to actually hurt people, things that people have done to hurt me. And either way, forgiveness to yourself as well as to your culprits has been healthy, but it's still a struggle, right? I was thinking about the scripture, and let me read this for everyone. It was Matthew 18:21 to 22, and most people may know about this one. It's when Peter and Jesus having a conversation about forgiveness, right? And it says, then Peter came to him and said, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times? Jesus said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times seven. Um, I'm not the smartest in math, but to me, that sounds like 490 times and above that we should be able to forgive someone. That don't necessarily resonate with me, especially when you start considering the level of heinous acts that someone may have said or done to you, both personally and professionally. So tell me, D, why is forgiveness so hard?
Well, let's look at it in you are a three-part being, right?
Okay.
Body, soul, spirit. Forgiveness is a God thing. That's your spirit. But the problem is our mind and our body get in the way. Like there's a part of every human being, no matter where you're from or what you do, that wants justice, right? That's what forgiveness. That's the hard part about forgiveness, because there's a part of you that cries out, "I want justice." But the problem is, as human beings, we don't know how to apply justice in a fair way. Like as much as we think we do, we don't.
Mm.
And so when those two things are conflicting, when our mind and our body is conflicting with our spirit says, let God take care of it. Our flesh says, you wrong me. I need to see justice by my own hand so I have peace about it. But it's really not true. You know what I mean? Because the thing is, whatever you feed grows. So if you punish this person, what's to keep you from not punishing them again? It was this book I was reading that said, it's called The Mastery of Love. And one of the things he said about love is that love is one penalty for one crime. But fear is one of those things that you penalize someone over and over again, or you penalize yourself over and over again for the same crime. So the problem with us as human beings is we think we have this sense of justice, but how many times do we don't forgive ourselves, right? How many times have we done something wrong and not let it go and punish ourselves over and over again? We do the same thing to people. So forgiveness is difficult because there's just a part of you that is hurt. There's a part of you that is in pain. And there's a part of you that also is judging someone and saying, I wouldn't have treated you that way. So there's this sense of fairness that you think you have when you don't clearly see yourself.
Well, that's powerful. I can tell you this. Looking over my life, unforgiveness causes hindrances to happiness. I'm just to simply state that, and I'm gonna give you an example. And I'm not sure to what degree a person may have been hurt that that's listening to this or watching this. Growing up, I suffered some heinous acts by a stepfather, right? Where he actually, beat my mom, molested my sister, beat me down. And I think at the age of 11, I hated the fact that I couldn't protect the ladies of my life, right? Then we all go to foster care, but fast forward, that led to so many other issues that have happened to me where forgiveness was something I would never ever consider. Actually, I was hoping for the day that he and I would see each other so I could say, you know what, I'm grown now. I served in the service. I'm ready, right? I was like, what you've done to me, dude, I'm going to make sure that it gets done to you. And interestingly, God never put us back in the same vicinity for a reason. I think so. But because of my focus on being able to hurt him eventually, couldn't love right, D. I had to have very good relationships because my whole mindset was around I can't get close to you because there might be a time where I might actually leave this earth because when I see this guy, I'm not sure what's going to happen. But my own hurt drove me to hurt other people.
Right.
And it's sad because when the chips fell down and God finally dealt with me, he put me under the tutelage of a gentleman who was my spiritual counselor. And he taught to me a lot about forgiveness. And I'm gonna be honest with you, D, if you don't want me being truly transparent, whatever he said, all I heard was want, 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 want. Because I'm like, I don't register with this love thing. I don't register with you gotta forgive. And it wasn't until I had my own God experience where the, the spirit said something to me like, if you want a happier life, you're gonna have to let go. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't think I want to let go. Right.
Right.
So after several years, keep in mind now 10 years has passed of me actually causing chaos, me going through turmoil. And interestingly, God opened up an opportunity because what I said to myself years prior to that, I said, I forgive him. Right. Then test came. The test
Right.
came. Had the opportunity to speak to my spiritual father, and he said you're going to see that life has already done the justice that you can't provide him. Again, wonk 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 wonk.
Right.
But he and I end up going to breakfast with each other, and strangely, I didn't even though I didn't like him physically, my spirit didn't still have that same innate hate like it did years before, right? So he and I got to talking, and I was asking him these questions. I said, "Help me understand why you did what you did." And I think I was in a place where I actually was ready, but honestly, emotionally, I wasn't ready because he had me relive every moment of his heinous acts to my mother, my sister, and myself. And then as I felt my emotions rising higher, he says something that shattered everything in me. He said, and Ellard, I got saved in XYZ year. And I don't know what happened, but like the veil of darkness just fell off me. And I looked him in his eyes. I said, I forgive you. And it took so much energy out of me when I did that. I wept, but I was free. I was finally
Right.
free. Like all the things I wish horribly in this person, and I wouldn't wish this upon anybody, that I was able to forgive him. Then I started thinking to myself, how many people did I need to ask to forgive me from when I was in my world of hurt that I caused them hurt? People who try to love me, people who try to befriend me, individuals that felt like, you know what, you're worth saving, but I didn't feel like I was worth saving because I was only focused on my own hurt and my own unforgiveness. So with that being said, it's a process, D. So help us walk us through the process of forgiveness. I don't want anyone to go through 15, 20 years like I did, harvesting all that hurt and just to find out later that you could have been free if you just forgive
Right.
me.
Right. Well, let's kind of start off on this because I did some studying to prepare, and these are not my words, but they resonate true nonetheless. So let's talk about what forgiveness is. Number
Okay.
one, it's a choice. You know, a lot of people hold forgiveness as a feeling, and it's a choice you have to make every day. It's a choice you have to make every day until it's subconscious, right? So when you are feeling a certain way, your feelings are thoughts. So forgiveness is a thought. It's a release, right? You have to come to that point, and so that's the second part of it. Is forgiveness is a release of resentment,
Mm.
because that's what is bubbling over. Like, you know what I mean? You look at yourself as an innocent person who didn't deserve it, and so you resent the person for putting you through a certain level of pain and anger and hurt. So that's, you know, part of it, and the other part is forgiveness is surrendering the desire to retaliate, like you said. Till you had gotten to that point, the only thing you wanted was justice for what had been done to you and your sisters, and not only that, but kind of how it affected you and how you affected others. Like all of that is being carried in that spirit of unforgiveness.
Right.
So forgiveness is letting go, not wanting to retaliate anymore, and making a choice consciously to let go. And that's why it's a process. And I think that's what frustrates people sometimes is that, even especially if you're a Christian, you say I forgave somebody, but you don't feel any different, right? Like
Mhm.
it's that thing like I said I forgive them, but why do I still feel this way? You still feel this way because you still have thoughts that are connecting you, right? I was praying the other day and I was looking for a definition of stronghold. And this is what God told me. He said, stronghold is a negative pattern of thinking validated by your emotions.
Ooh,
So
I might steal
when I
that, by the
thought
way.
about that, go ahead. It's for the people. So when I thought about that, I said, all right, what are the things that I'm holding on to that I validate by the way I feel? And the only thing it does is it keeps me connected to a past that doesn't exist anymore. Like that's one of the things that I read from one of these books. It said that the past doesn't exist. It only exists in your mind. Once that moment is gone, it's gone. So we are literally living in a moment that doesn't exist anymore and penalizing ourselves in that moment when we stay in a place of unforgiveness. So that leads to the next question is kind of what happens when we forgive others, right? The first thing is we free up our heart, like you talked about. You cried and everything like that, but you finally felt this release, this burden, this weight being lifted off of you. And that's because the next part of that is you had a peace of mind. Like you finally didn't carry the thought anymore. You didn't have that stronghold anymore. There was no thought of, I need to get revenge, I need to get them back. Like you're seeing, we talked about with three parts, right? Your spirit and your mind and your soul are now aligning. That's what forgiveness is going to give you. It's going to give you the God part of you that says God is love. Don't hold on to this. And now your mind is making that shift as well. And your soul, your emotions, your intellect, everything's lining up. And that's why you have a release, because you're finally connected to that genuine part of you that's connected to God. So that's what happens when you forgive. And you get to start over. That's the beautiful thing. Like after all this happened, you got to take a person you had history with and start again, right? Fresh start. It doesn't mean that you let go or you forgot everything that happened. It just means that you're not penalizing that person and you're not penalizing yourself anymore. And so I think part of what makes forgiveness hard is that people have the wrong understanding of what it means. That people feel like, oh, I forgive you, I don't hold you accountable anymore, or I gotta forget like it never happened, or the pain wasn't real. Like, no, forgiveness just says I'm letting go, I'm moving on, and I'm going to make sure that my life is good and the past is not dictating my future nor my present.
My past is not dictating my future. All right. You're over here dropping philosophical bombs on me right now, and it got me just pondering some of the things that you're saying, D. I wrote the book called Defeating Goliath, right? And I think I wrote it under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. But one of the things that he had me write about was forgiveness, and the book talks about how forgiveness is a spiritual design, as you're saying, right? That's the reason why it's so difficult. You can handle a lot of things, but when someone violates you and you determine at what level of that violation is, the justice should equal what's been done to you. But as you know, that's not a godly principle, right? I started thinking about the scripture when Peter said up to 7 times. So Peter had in his mind, so, okay, you know what? I will forgive a person up to 7 times, right? Depending on how close we are. But after that, I think I need to cut you loose, or you know what? Vengeance is going to be mine, and I'm not the Lord, right? But I have a question.
Sure.
If you are forgiving an individual that's close to you, that who's hurt you, like, so deep, how do you truly remove yourself from the environment and not feel like you're obligated to stay in that relationship or in that situation?
I think the reality of it is that forgiveness doesn't mean that you have to continue a relationship. Like I think that's kind of key to remembering all this. Forgiveness is a release, but you don't have to stay anywhere where you don't feel loved. And I want to use that word. So just because you care about someone or someone has a special place in your heart, your mind, your soul, it doesn't mean that you are supposed to be there with that person. Because just because you forgave them doesn't mean that they're in a place that they can have a healthy relationship with you. It also doesn't mean that you're in a place that you can have a healthy relationship with them. You might have gotten to a point where you can let go, but one of the things that people often forget about whenever Jesus healed someone, he forgave them first. The healing came after the forgiveness. So if you understand that, You can forgive somebody and not be through with the healing process, right?
Mm.
And I'll give an example. Like yesterday, I burned myself, right? Through that whole day, it was bothering me. And if I touched it or bust up against it, the wind blew, I felt it. Now, I had let go of that moment, but the pain was still there.
Ooh.
It wasn't until today that I touched it and I look at it and it's like, it's there. I see it. It's a scar, but it has no effect on me. That's when you know that you can have a relationship where that's a place that you can be okay. And you can acknowledge the pain, think about it, and it doesn't have an effect on you. So forgive the person is one part. The healing can take longer. And most people confuse those two things. Everything is a graduation, right? It's levels that you're going to have to go through. So the first level, one of the things that I was reading, it said that the process of healing, number one, walk in the truth, right? So that's where most people struggle. Be honest about what it is you feel, you think, where you're at. Be honest with everybody. If you're mad at God, be mad at God, be mad at the person, acknowledge where you're at. But you still have to come to this truth. The truth of the matter is you are still a person worthy of love. Like, and that's where forgiving yourself comes in sometimes. Like a lot of times we look at ourselves and say, maybe I did something to deserve this. Everybody intrinsically, your value is from God. No human being gives you your value. So no human being can take it away.
Ooh.
So when you forgive yourself, you realize that truth, right? I have something from God that made me valuable that no person, no human being can touch. They can tarnish the skin part, but that's my responsibility to heal. The mind part, that's my responsibility to heal. But God put something in me that intrinsically I am valuable, and no
Mm.
person can take that away. But most of us, when we stay in that state of unforgiveness, we give that to somebody else. We give our worthiness to someone else. We give our validation to someone else. So now the circumstances and the situations dictate whether or not I'm worthy to receive love. And if you can't receive love, you can't forgive. Like those two things go hand in hand. If you can't receive love, you can't forgive yourself, you can't forgive anybody else. So you have to be able to walk in the truth of what happened, the truth of how God sees you, the truth of how God sees the situation. Like there's a level of alignment you have to get to. And then once you get to that level of truth, the next part of that is you have to forgive um, yourself, right? And then you have to forgive the other people. And that's a hard part a lot of times is that forgiving yourself. Because sometimes you know better, but you don't do better, right?
Mm.
And that is the thing. Like it's hard to. Sometimes we have this part of us that can't separate what we've been through and where we stayed. Like some things we have to go through, but we made choices to stay in that place or to go to that place.
Right.
That's the hard part that we have sometimes in letting go. Like, man, I knew that person wasn't good for me, right? I stayed anyway. Like I knew, and that was something I could have went through. I could have just made a decision to put this person in a proper place, but I stayed in a place that I wasn't supposed to be in. Or, you know, I did something. I was somewhere I knew I shouldn't have been in an innocent manner, right? Like you may have gone to a party that you know you shouldn't have been to, and then the next day you messed up at work or you weren't prepared for work. You're beating yourself up again. So there's opportunities to forgive all the time, like as a human being, but it has to be something that it is God in you, not circumstance driven. Um, and so that's kind of where I stopped on those two. I'm gonna have to come back to it, but I see a look in your eye that says you want to examine something right there.
No, I'm just listening. I apologize if I'm steepling, but it was more like I'm engaged. I am appreciating this. I think that so many people need to hear the wisdom that you are releasing right now. I just feel that regardless of what the violation may have been done to you or a family member, forgiveness does have a role in your healing. It has a role in you getting through it. It has a role in you being able to get to the next level that God called you to, right? Oftentimes we're stifled and hindered by what you were saying before, what we harness within. And let's be honest, there are some things that have happened that your emotions, your feelings, and the thoughts you have are justifiable, right? Whether that
Right.
is for someone, cheating on you, lying on you, beating on you, um, taking a loved one, if you will, as we've been seeing so much. Then there's this my unforgiveness with God, who actually is the
Right.
creator of what you're speaking of before, the value that I have. And sometimes we don't understand that our emotions, our feelings are justifiable. However, we still have the mandate to find a way to forgive so we can release ourselves. There was a quote that someone said, and it went like something like this: the only way a person could forgive is to realize that he's been a prisoner to himself, but
Right.
he still holds a key, and that key is forgiveness. And I thought to myself, like, yeah, but I'm gonna keep this key in my pocket for a little while longer, because oftentimes our own emotions are our birth child, and we protect that, right? We protect that hate that we have, we protect that hurt that we have, because we want someone to pay. Someone gave me the biggest realization. It was like an epiphany, if you will. It said this: do you know that while you over here hurting and you angry, that other person living their life
Right.
as if nothing has happened, but you are hindering your own life because you want that person to pay, but you being angry and you unforgiving is not impacting that individual, right? It's
Right.
impacting you and everything that's around you, kind of like a pebble that's dropped into the pond and how it ripples out. I was speaking to a nurse, I think 3 days ago, powerful Christian woman. She said, Eller, there's medical benefits to forgiveness,
Right.
and there's medical challenges with unforgiveness. And a lot of people don't realize that. I've seen in the hospital where so many people got to the point where they hated or they were angry so much to the where it caused cardiac arrest, their health declined, only to come to find out that had they been able to forgive, their body would start repairing itself and start doing what it needs to do. So there's some medical consequences and some medical releases also associated to forgiveness, right? So
Right.
I'm gonna pose this question to you. Person who actually been hurt really bad, we have understand the dimensions of love, because you actually broke it down so well. But what are the steps? Like, where's ground one? Like, if I
Okay.
want to forgive, but yet what's happened to me is it's so innate within me. How do I even get to ground one? I understand the love, I understand the value that I have with myself, but it's so hard because I'm magnetized by the events and the actions of another person. So where's ground one?
Um. So we talked about healing, 3 steps, and let me clearly identify them, because I think I mentioned them, but I didn't give them in a step format. So I want it
Okay.
easy to follow. Walking in the truth,
Hmm.
right? Forgiveness, forgiving yourself, forgiving others, and then God's love and self love. So those are the 3 steps. So you're right. Where do I begin? I believe the first thing you do in walking in the truth, and this is something that I've gone through. It's a gentleman named, he goes by the moniker for his business, Stephen Speaks, and he wrote some books on healing. And the first thing that he said was, write a letter to everybody that comes to your mind that hurt you, right? So part of it is just getting it out. So many of us sit in the quiet stillness of our pain, and we've
Hmm.
gotten so comfortable there that it feels like I'm digging up. I have to climb such a high mountain to get out, right? Because pain is, life in general is funny, and pain is one of those things that is an indicator that something's wrong, but you can get comfortable in it. You can get a certain level of comfort in it. It can become familiar. So I think the first step is acknowledging what that pain is and getting it out in front of you, right? If you have a wound, one of the first things they tell you is that you have to expose it for it to heal. When they treat you, they cut you open, they take whatever's out. There's an exposure process to healing. So one of the kind of the simplest things, but one of the things that I've learned as far as the healing process goes, is just getting out in front of it and exposing it. So if whoever it is, whatever it is, write a letter about it. Now, Stephen is, again, he goes by Stephen Speaks. He says there's a 2-point process. The first one is just raw emotion. Just get all your emotions out, whether it's a God, a person, an event, get all of your emotions out. That's the first part. The second part you want to do is that you want to take whatever that is and change it and talk about how you feel and how it impacted you, but don't assassinate the person that you are upset with or that it hurt you, right? So you go from this process of getting it all out, and now let me repackage it in such a way that I let you know how it made me feel without making the other person or the event so powerful that it can't be let go of, if that makes sense. So, and then you give that letter, if that person is alive, to that person. There are, times that you wouldn't, but if it's someone who's already passed away, you read the letter and you burn it. If it's to God, you read it and you burn it. If it's to a person, you send it to them just so they know how you feel or how the things that they did or said impacted you. But you don't try to attack that person. You try to share your feelings. And I think that's a beginning point for most people they don't even get to. As we talk about our family and our fathers, my dad, towards the end of his life, when we talk about the health benefits, he had so much unforgiveness in him, and life started to hit him from so many different angles that the strongest man I ever saw. And when I say strongest, I mean I never saw him sick. I literally saw a hammer from a shotgun fall on his finger. He went to the sink, washed water over it, put duct tape over it, and went back to work. That type of individual started to break down on all levels, and it seemed like it was all at once. Mentally, he started recalling things and that were said or done 20 years ago. Like he was having an argument with my mom one day and brought up somebody, and she said, "Baby, he's been dead for 15 years." Right? His body started breaking down. He wasn't taking the best care of himself to begin with, but then he started having kidney failure, and he probably was diagnosed with kidney disease and didn't tell anybody. That's still kind of a mystery, but us putting two and two together. And then when he no longer had a purpose in his mind, or he didn't see any value in himself if he couldn't do what he felt like was his job or what he loved to do, everything collapsed. So you just have this place where it's so important, your overall mental health. And this is what unforgiveness is about. It's about your mental, your spiritual and physical health. That if you hold on to these things, it just has a way of attaching itself to you and breaking your body down slowly and surely. One of the books I was reading about cleansing, it talked about viruses and bacteria. He said, your body and your spirit is the same way, is designed to fight off certain attacks. Problem is how you fuel your body either empowers what's in your system or it kills what's in your system. Which leads me to the second thing. Now that you started this process of acknowledgement, you got to start working on your mind. You got to start telling yourself the truth, right? You got to start telling yourself I'm worthy. You got to start telling yourself I'm loved, that these situations don't define me. I define me. And I don't know what everybody's belief system is, right? Crystals and crosses, we kind of talked about it before. I can only speak from my belief is. And that one of the truths is that even though bad things happen to me, if I put it in the light of God's love, I can use it for my benefit. And so, and we kind of had talked about this. One of the things I was reading a pastor was doing a podcast, and he said, as much as Jesus loved John, as much as he loved Peter, he needed Judas to get him to the cross, right? Some things in your life are going to push you towards your purpose. It doesn't mean that they were good, but it means that it can be used good for good. If that makes sense. Like it wasn't good, what happened was wrong, but it doesn't mean that it can't be used for your good, because it can push you towards your purpose, or it can push you to deal with things that you've been ignoring. Like, and that's the other thing, that these things fester and grow and they can connect themselves. Negative energy will find a way to connect to negative energy. So holding this just begins to fester in other ways. So you just have to go through the process of exposing it, retraining your mind, putting real truth into your mind. And then from that place, you begin to walk it out. And I believe that's the process. It's a day-to-day process of exposing the truth, renewing your mind to God's truth. Let's just put it that way, because I don't want you getting a bearing in truth. No matter how you see God in a religious standpoint, the teachings of God are the same, right? No matter where you go, God is love. So if you retrain your mind to what God says about you and the situation, you can start to release yourself and come into a new space that when you look at that wound, you look at it differently now. You look at it as the lessons learned. You look at it as the growth that it took you through. You look at how it strengthened you. You look at how it prepared you. You know what I mean? Like you, for instance, the things that you went through, nobody would wish on their worst enemy. But you look at the man you are today, what your ministry is, how you reach people, how you connect people. Those things have put you now in a position that, number one, it makes you relatable, right? Because that's the thing. Sometimes when we're going through pain, we all have this feeling that I'm the only one experiencing this. But when somebody can see you through your pain and still acknowledge that beautiful part in you, man, that opens you up. And so with everything that you've been through, there's not a person on the planet that you can't sit down with, from the lowest end of the spectrum as far as what they've been through to the most successful person in the world. And you have that varying range. So that gives you purpose. And that honestly become a filter for God's love. And every person has that opportunity. That's the thing. We were born to connect to other people. If you ever look at a child, if you want to kill a baby, take them out of the presence of a person. You know, a lot of times with newborns, what they do is if they are premature, they'll connect them to a person that can talk to them and touch them, that facilitates their healing and growth. So when I tell you you were born to connect with people, I'm not lying to you. That connection matters. One of the first things that God said to Adam was, "Oh, it's not good that you be by yourself."
Mm.
So that's the thing about forgiveness is if we don't operate and start the forgiveness process, we start to put up walls. We start to disconnect from the world that we're supposed to be connected to. And if you take anything out of what it's meant to be connected to, it dies. You take a fish out of water, you take a tree
Mm.
out of the earth, you take a person out of positive, healthy relationships, they die. And so you have to realize that unforgiveness is the equivalent of death, right? It's the process of breaking down and dying.
Wow, that's
So the
hot.
longer you hold it and the bigger the thing that you're holding on to, the faster your demise.
Yo, look, yo, you have me mesmerized for a moment. I have studied, I have spoken to thousands of individuals, D, and in this simple conversation, you've actually got me to another level of thinking, my good man. Like, it's I can say, I've written books, sold internationally, and yet somehow I felt like I've impacted people, but I was impacted today. And yo, you're my guy. I appreciate you, family. I really appreciate you. We're at the top of the time, so but yeah, what last words or encouraging words would you be willing to say to the people who are watching this right now?
Um, as someone who is working through a healing process, number one, be kind and patient to yourself. I think that's one of the things when you're going through something and you know you shouldn't be there, you try to rush yourself out of it, especially when other people validate your feelings. Like, oh, that wasn't right. You shouldn't have had to deal with that. That person mistreated you. And the next thing they say in an effort to comfort you, but it also stymies you is let it go and move on with your life. But that negates you understanding that's a process. That's a day-to-day journey. And so realize, be kind to yourself, be gracious with yourself, take it one step at a time. And that's the first thing I would say. Number two, you got to start feeding your mind, your body, your spirit the right thing so that nurturing process for forgiveness can take place. You can't. Oh man, what was it? Hold on. I read this today and it connected with me so much. I want to share it. It says you can't defeat your demons while still enjoying their company. So,
That says
so
so much to that cause that is a very broad and very impactful quote or whatever you just stated right now, because our demons could be internal, our demons could be the vicinity that we're in with certain individuals, our demons could be the people that we work with, but that's
yeah,
that's a
so
different level. But go ahead.
yeah, so I want that to be the next thing that you have to realize is that you have to put yourself in the healthiest environment that you can, body, mind, soul, and spirit. So that means some people you ain't gonna be able to talk to. That means some places you ain't gonna be able to go, some things you ain't gonna be able to watch. Like you have to create this environment that's conducive for you to get to this place of forgiveness. Um, and I think the last thing is just realize that God loves you. Like I can't emphasize that enough. So much of the pain and hurt that we go through leaves us question us. First of all, is God real? And if he is real, why did this happen? Right? We start to measure God's love in the sense of the things that we go through. Right. And so it is to some degree a skewed view, right? It is a in the moment where I am view, but it also limits you. Like as a child, you understand, like as you being a father, you know how many things that on a probably hourly or daily basis, you're trying to save your son's life from. Don't touch that. Don't
Yeah.
eat that. Don't go over there. Don't run in there. Like you are every day trying to save his life and he has no idea. And sometimes when he makes decisions and he goes through something, he doesn't look at it through the filter of what you tried to keep him from and the environment that he's in. He
Wow.
doesn't see the times that he ran out in the street and you ran out and came and got him. He forgets about that.
Hmm.
He just remembers of the time he ran out in the street and you weren't around seemingly and something happened to him. He's like, Daddy, why did you let that happen? Well, baby, I told you stop running the street long time
Wow.
ago. You know what I mean? Like, don't look at where God's love for you based on the situation. Because as I look back through my own healing process and writing my own letter to God, as I started writing it, I was like, I wanted to be mad about this, but then I thought about it. I was like, yeah, but that was my fault. And then I started writing something. I was like, yeah, but I wasn't listening. So in this reflective moment, I still have this part of me that says, God, and why didn't you do more to keep me away? And I also realized that love without choice is slavery.
Ooh, yes.
So in order for me to fully appreciate God's love, He has to always give me the ability to choose. And a lot
Mm,
of times as human beings, that's the missing piece, is that we give away our ability to choose. We talked about it again at the top. Choice, forgiveness is a choice. How many choices do we give away every day based on our circumstances, but not the truth of who we are and how God sees us? So that's what I got, man.
I appreciate it. I'm gonna say this on behalf of everyone who may not get a chance to speak to you personally, um, but who could appreciate what you shared today. Again, everyone, this is my good friend Dwayne Deloge. I want to say thank you so much for watching this. I think forgiveness is so important, and as you heard, you see the reasons why it's powerful and important to forgive. If you are wrestling with forgiveness, I strongly urge you to watch this video again and take notes next time if you didn't this time. So that way you have an action plan to getting you to your next level personally and spiritually. So this is Elder Thomas with Power and Success Ministries. I'm so happy you joined us today, and you have a great day and learn the power that you have within and the value that you have within as well. Take care. Talk to you soon.